Catch up on all the live shows right here on africatechradio.com.
Okay, you're listening to Africa Tech Radio, and you're listening to the program Back to Base. The aim of Back to Base on Africa Tech Radio is to humanize tech founders so that you can get inspiration to start your own tech journey. I'll just say that it's never too late. My name is Lillian, and today we'll be having a chat with Dario Giuliani. Please correct me if I got that wrong. Did I get it right?
Giuliani, but it's fine.
Giuliani.
I got all sorts of surnames.
Giuliani.
Yes.
Okay. Dario Giuliani, but I'll just be calling you Dario to avoid any problems. He is the founder, CEO of Briter Bridges, and we want to talk about his journey so far. He'll be taking us through his journey and also, founding Briter Bridges. So the thing is, to many people, when the topic of data comes up, it sounds like gibberish. A friend of mine who is not a techie asked me about Briter Bridges and asked me whether, talked about how he has not heard of it and all that. He went on to ask me a lot of questions, and I said, okay, time out. I'm having a chat with the founder, and who better to answer those questions than Dario, right? But what we're talking about today is your journey. I don't recall seeing anything that talks about you. So now, after we talk about you, we'll branch into Briter Bridges, which is an integral part of your journey as well. So, are you ready to get personal?
I am. Yeah, I think I usually talk about the backstory when I speak in public. It doesn't often get recorded. Briter has a very unconventional journey, I have to say.
I can't wait to hear it. I love a good origin story. So how did your journey into what is your career today start?
Thank you, Lynn. So I don't even know where to start from. I wouldn't be able to actually point at a moment in time where this journey started, because there are different chapters of this journey, but I would probably say the most, or I guess the funniest one, the most unconventional one, is the fact that I found myself in Ghana while finishing my master's degree, and I had founded a magazine. It's always been a dream of mine to be an editor of a magazine, so I set up my own. It was nothing fancy, like no one was really reading it, but it was about entrepreneurship and innovation for development, for impact. And I happened to be doing street photography, so I went to Ghana with my camera, my tripod, my books, and my recorder. And what I was supposed to be doing was an actual internship in solar energy, and the internship turned out to not exist. So what happened was, after a week of doing nothing, I resigned, and I said I need to invest my time in Ghana because I'm going to be here for a few months. So this is my last day with you guys. And so what happened was I began my journey across Accra and outside Accra by taxi, using my tripod and my camera, Googling at night any entrepreneurs that would be around. Bear in mind, this was like 2016. So it was very early for especially Ghanaian ecosystem. And I began this journey of writing stories. I even started a YouTube channel that had probably got like four followers. It's still alive though. Like I kept it just for the memories. And I started interviewing entrepreneurs, and turned out to be something that I love doing, and something that I thought I could build upon. And I started building upon it. And after a couple of years of working in corporates and working in consulting, I decided it was a good time for me to start my actual journey as an editor of a magazine, and I kicked off Briter as Briter, and not as the company that was before. The company before was called Gino, and Gino stood for, Gin is kind of an Indian word for genius, for idea, and Inno stands for innovation, right? And so the idea was this magazine about innovation, about ideas, about creativity. And then I started Briter. So this is how really Briter began, as a visual content creation platform. And then by way of collecting data, by way of interviewing people, I started effectively keeping a log on Excel of the people I was meeting, what they were doing, started segmenting by the industry, by sector, by geographies. And that led to where we're now, a team of 14 people active all across Africa and emerging markets, and having a 2.0, maybe informally a 4.0 version of our platform. And ultimately millions and millions of data.
Okay, remember when I said I want to get personal, right? You talked about how you had your master's. And what did you study? What your first degree, your master's? What did you study?
So my master was actually in London. It was a university called SOAS, School of Oriental and African Studies. And it's been a passion of mine to work across Africa since I was probably 17. Don't ask me why. I just had it in me, right? I guess that was my calling.
Okay.
And I've always been very consistent with this passion. So I've always been reading about it. I've always been studying about it. I've always been working in the space, and I've ultimately founded a company. And I would say I studied development studies. So my passion was to figure out, like, to be competent about what it takes to promote socioeconomic growth. I didn't necessarily want to take the route of NGOs, of humanitarian space, not because I'm against it, but just because that was not what I wanted to focus on. And I began writing stories. I've always been a big fan of promoting good information, factual and objective information. And that's why I turned Briter from a magazine into kind of what we call now a market intelligence company. Because what we wanted was a platform that would be able to inform without necessarily attaching opinions, attaching biases, and try to be as transparent as possible. Something that we do every day when we publish is adding a lot of disclaimers, a lot of caveats, not just because we want to shield ourselves from problems and cancels, this is a cancel culture, but not that we are like, we need to defend ourselves on this. I think we're very careful, but because we really wanted to make sure we provide the market with a platform that ultimately would be a point of reference for information.
Okay. When people talk about their startups and their businesses, they say it with ambiguous terms. So I'm listening to you and I'm nodding. I'm saying, yeah, but I'm not understanding anything you're talking about if I am not in that field. So I want you to break this down for me now in layman's terms. Talk to me as if I don't know anything about the field. What do Briter Bridges do? Okay.
So Lillian, I've started pitching Briter, and this is the first time I do it in public on a show. I started pitching Briter as the gossip girl of Africa business.
Ooh, XOXO.
Exactly. Exactly. So I've pitched Briter all sorts of things. Like I've called it the Bloomberg for Africa. I've called it the pitch book for emerging markets. I've called it many things, and now ultimately we've gone this funny way. But Briter was born as a company that wants to provide information about opportunities in markets that do not have this type of information. Okay, not that don't have opportunities, but they do not have a production of information that allows basically an audience inside these countries or outside these countries to get a sense of what actually happens. And as a matter of fact, we never use the word developing countries. We hardly ever use the word emerging markets. We started now because effectively we're expanding towards the emerging markets. But we've always used the formula underserved markets. And the reason for this is the underserved piece that we focus on is the lack of information. So what we do is creating databases, so creating lists and directories that are very comprehensive, that are very organized, that are very thought through, that explain what happens in these markets from an industry perspective, from a sector perspective, from an impact perspective, from a demographic perspective. So we look at different industries. We provide information about opportunities in agriculture, opportunities in financial technology, opportunities in healthcare, opportunities for female founders, opportunities coming from public investors, opportunities coming from private investors, what banks are doing and corporates are doing to provide the help to the entrepreneurs, right? So market intelligence, in truth, is nothing but storytelling, and storytelling is nothing but the aggregation and the steering of an amount of data that we've collected, right? The use for a certain purpose, which is the use of data, the use of data collection, the use of research, for the purpose of showing the world what actually happens across these markets. This is what we're doing. And that's why I stay away from saying we work with startups, we work with VCs, we work with valuations, because my purpose and Briter's purpose is not actually the startup world. What we want to focus on is the production of information on business and investment and grow from that angle. Obviously, we started from the innovation space, the startup world. That was my edge, that was my angle, that was what I knew the most, right? And that's what got my foot in the door. But now we're in a moment where like we're doubling the team every 12 months. So now we're in a phase where we're expanding geographically, we're expanding the team, we're expanding the data points that we're focusing on, the categories that we look at way beyond like the startup space, way beyond Africa. We want to try to create opportunities across the world, including Africa. And we probably, I would say, if not the only one, we're one of the very few companies that have started from Africa and are now expanding towards the emerging markets.
It's always the other way around. But you started from here. So before a business is founded, there must have been a problem that has been identified, right? You see that, okay, this is a problem. And then you realize that it needs an urgent solution, right? You have pointed out some of those problems that you spotted. But I'd like to know if there are more. And if you are able, or you have been able to, so far I'm talking about Briter Bridges, if Briter has been able to solve those problems that you identified early on when you started.
Ooh, what? When you say problems?
I mean loopholes or something that needed, to be corrected.
As in, from the ecosystem or from what we were doing?
The ecosystem that's why Briter was
from
found.
ecosystem. Okay,
yes.
Okay. So the way the ecosystem. Okay, I thought this was a question on what we learned. So the way the ecosystem developed, I would say. It's actually been fascinating. I think I was just discussing recently with someone how we've now observed a number of generations of entrepreneurs, generations of investors, generations of narratives happening across the continent. And something that I am very proud of, not about Briter, but about the way the ecosystem has developed, is there's a shift towards maturity of the debate. It's not just about, oh my God, African entrepreneurs are saving the world, which was already a massive shift from there's nothing going on in Africa to, okay, what are the business models that are working, right? I happened to be talking to a founder in mobility probably a month ago about how when he started and I started, there was a massive market for their model. And 5 years later, 6 years later, what you find is actually there's some major corporates globally have entered the market, and these are the ones that are now capturing the market share, and how their business models, because of the hardship and unit economics, because of the massive investment needed, because of the fact that just global business models across Africa might not fit, how the ecosystem has changed, right? And how perspectives have changed, how opinions have changed. So I think more than problems is, it's going to be very cheesy to say, but like more than problems is going to be opportunities that we're realizing the ecosystem is facing. Right? There's new narratives, there's new opportunities of what can be done and cannot be done, based on what can be done and what cannot be done across the ecosystem. Right? New business models. More than the lack of information, now it's the lack of accurate information, the lack of a point of reference. Right? More than the lack of funding, which obviously will always be the case, is the lack of specific funding at specific stages, right? Or lack of access to certain support at certain sectors, right? So one of the things that we've highlighted is very recently is how there has been a growth in sector-specific investors. There used to be investors covering everything. Now there's a growth in very specific subsegment of the market that investors focus on, because they can really focus their attention on specific business models, on specific verticals, on specific customer segments, right? And what we're trying to do at Briter is capturing this information and put it out there in the most comprehensive and feasible way possible. Not feasible, sorry, readable way possible.
Okay. When you're talking about how you started Briter, how you went to Ghana for the internship opportunity, which didn't exist, which I still want to know, maybe later you tell me what that was about. But then you said you had to now start literally backpacking in a cab around Ghana, and you were meeting startups, founders and all. You made it seem like, as you were saying it, I was like, whoa, that sounds so easy. But it is not. Obviously, it's not. So I'd like to know some of the biggest challenges that you faced when you started Briter and how you overcame them, really.
This is a conversation I have a lot with people in general, but about the concept of entrepreneurship itself. Like a lot of people are like, oh, you can train to become an entrepreneur. You can want to become an entrepreneur. I don't think it's often like, I think often the case is you start doing a project and then the project grows and then you have to quit your job because the project is growing and it's occupying a bigger share in your life. And then you're going to have to hire because not only you're full time, but you cannot keep up with the workload, and then you keep hiring, and then you keep hiring. And if there's demand and you do things, I guess, properly, the demand grows, and you need to be able to respond to it, right? I started with, I think my account was like minus $2,000. Like it was, there was no seed capital in this. I was the seed capital, right? It was my backpack. And I mean, I never lacked resources to do what I was doing. I've always worked since I was 18. As a matter of fact, the first year I was a waiter when I was before I launched Briter. I served a lot of burgers before I launched Briter. But I would say the things more practically, the thing that I struggled the most with has been product. Because what happened was, as I shifted from more manual data collection and consulting, which is what Briter began monetizing, the shift from that to product was a shift that required capital, was a shift that required technical skills, which I lacked, both of which I lacked, right? So what happened was I actually have been struggling for years to be able to launch, to get the product to where it is now, to where it's been for the past few months and a couple of years. But so that I would say from a solo founder, like without any specific capital advancement, is something that I've struggled with. I think the other aspect, which I don't consider as a struggle, I just consider as a feature of the journey that you're on when you start a project like this, is your brain never disconnects. And there's so much that you can do to say, like, you need work-life balance and you need to do yoga in the morning and journal and do sport. The truth is, when things grow the way they grow, they've grown at Briter, you have to be able to resilient enough to step up and be on top of things every day. But there's a happy ending to this. So Briter has entered the 5th year now. So we're almost half a decade old.
Congratulations.
And thanks. And we're actually throwing a big party. So like for everyone listening, like there's going to be a great party at the end of the year. But the happy ending part of this is, over the past 12 months, I would say Briter has gotten to a point where we managed to structure a team in such a way that enables me to not have to do everything or cover like every ground, and cover specific ground that are appropriate for my role. Mm-hmm. And so my role has been an ever-changing role. And what I find right now is I have more time to have weekends. I have more time to do sport. I have more time to travel. I have more time to pick up my passions that I had to kind of give up over the course of the first few years, which was my music and my photography, for instance.
Music.
And now I'm picking up again. Yeah, I've played guitar for like 23 years. So yeah.
Okay, that's interesting.
That's been my thing. But yeah, so I would say probably the challenges and the journey of building a company have different phases, different sides, and not all hope is gone because in the first couple of years you're not able to do anything that work, especially if it's growing. And I think the resilience aspect and the passion aspect are so important for you to be able to run a company sustainably, and these cannot be taught. Like the truth is, you can hardly ever teach resilience, especially because you need to teach resilience in the first 6 months and the business kicks off, right? Mm-hmm. But I also think resilience is a function of passion. Resilience is a function of your belief in what you're doing. As I said before, I've been passionate about this since I was 17. I'm turning 30 next month. So it's been 12 years that I've been focused on this, right? So this has been my passion forever. So I think that's where it comes from. I don't say that this is the only way for people to be able to run a company. There are many other ways. There are many more technical and smarter ways to run a company, but this is the way I've built Briter. This is the way I would say this is the only way I know.
Right. When we talk about challenges, we also talk about lessons, because, okay, in my daily life, if I'm around people who maybe this person fell into a ditch because she was not looking, she was, always on her phone, I will make sure that when I'm on the road, I'm not going to always be on my phone, so I'll avoid that ditch. Same with life. If people know that, okay, these are, some challenges along the way that you can face, and this is how you can overcome them, it can help, right? Also, I believe that lessons are also, needed for people to who want to tow this particular path, it can help them as well. So can you share some lessons that you've learned along your journey as an entrepreneur, as a founder, as a solo founder? And also, I would like to know if being a solo founder is more difficult, because I've seen a lot of co-founders, and I'm not seeing the co-founder at Briter Bridges, right? So is it more difficult? But I'm asking too many questions. Let's just start from the lessons that you've learned.
I mean, I'll start from the last one. I don't know if it's more or less difficult to start with as a solo founder or not. I think I would even dare say that having a co-founder is riskier than not having one, in the sense that like having a bad relation with your co-founder can actually kill the business, even though the business is doing well.
Mm-hmm.
And whereas obviously there's ups and there's goods and bads in both. I don't think there's a blueprint for anything. I know spectacular solo founders and spectacular pals who've been running businesses together. So I don't think there's a blueprint, as I said. I wouldn't say I've struggled for being a solo founder. As I said, what I struggled with was the lack of specific skills, but that doesn't mean that you need to find them in a co-founder, right? Okay. You can find skills as skills. You can buy the skills, right? But this is my perspective again. I don't wanna impose my opinion. This is my experience. Mm-hmm. Lesson learned is resilience is extremely important. Passion is extremely important, but not in a cheesy way. Not like wake up and thank the world because you're grateful and you should be grateful. Like passion in the sense of belief. You need to really believe inside and out what you're doing. The lesson is also building a team and listen to the team is very important. Being able to be transparent and be honest is very important. I told my team I wasn't going to raise any funding at Briter from the start. So there was no chase for like big millions. There was not there's a chase for big millions in terms of revenues. But when we started, we were very humble with the way we went by it, right? Mm-hmm. The person who's now my COO basically started also very early in career, and now we stuck together for 4 years. He's basically my co-founder, right? The early team is basically a co-founding team because you're in the trenches when there's nothing, right? When they're still building. When it's cool because you go home with like corporate mugs and corporate hoodies, but you're not going home with a Tesla, right? You're just like believing in the process. So I would say that the team has been important, and resilience has been important, and also this is just an approach to life that I always have is that life is a spinning wheel. Like I think there are days where like everything seems crashing down, but the next day is a new day, and then you wake up and there's a massive opportunity in the bag, right? And resilience is very important to overcome those dark days. Very, very important. But again, not all of this can be taught, right? Especially in like handbooks and business schools. I think that there are some elements of luck, of course. Like there are things. Anyone who's been working in the tourism industry. One of my best friends works in hospitality. They've been running a thriving set of businesses in the hospitality space, one of the largest cities in the world. And when COVID hit, this was one of the most like lockdown-stricken cities in the world for years, not even months. How do you deal with it, right? How do you deal with having put $150,000 of your savings and your inheritance maybe in a business that is just going to go down because everything has been locked? But again, life moves on, and personally, he's been thriving now. He's thriving, and I've seen many businesses go through sort of ebbs and flows. I think resilience is important. I think being determined to understand that the journey is not going to be linear is also very important. And also, I think not putting money in front of everything is very important. Like there's an internal joke in our team because the first few years I still say that I've never been money driven. And there was people in my team who'd be like, yes, but we are. And so we do want to make, so we're like, yeah, but we do want to make money. So like, get your shit together, so it's been funny because we've had this conversation, but I actually truly believe that like, if all you think of is money, you're gonna really suffer any shock or any unpredictable event that is going to happen in your company.
Well, you might not be money driven, but your team will be money driven for you. Just continue with what you're doing. So, how do you stay focused as an entrepreneur, especially during challenging times? I know that even people who have 9-to-5 jobs, sometimes they have burnout and they'll just say, okay, I'm giving up. I'm no longer doing this. I'll change jobs. But you cannot change jobs. You're literally you're the founder. You cannot just leave Briter Bridges and go work somewhere else. You are with that company. So how do you stay motivated and focused?
I think there are different aspects to this. One aspect to this is the very technical one. So as things grow and your agenda grows, having structured, starting from the least sexy version of what I could say here, but very practically, it's very important to understand the priorities of the business, because especially a company like us, we used to go on TV, we used to go on talks, we used to write, people will reach out, say we want to do a collab, we want to do a mapping on AI, we want to do a mapping on blockchain, we want to do a mapping of video games, we want to do, and understanding how many resources you can devote to a specific aspect of the business without, business is math. At the end of the day, it's mathematics. So at the end of the day, you need to have X plus 1 or you're not gonna pay salaries. So that's the focus. And for me, the focus has always been making sure that the business would get to the end of the month as X plus 1. And my team knows this. I am anti-stress. It's impossible for you to see me stressed. I'm immune to stress. But the only thing that gets me restless is the fear that I might not be able to pay salaries, right? And for an enterprise that is not funded, that doesn't have a bunch of money up front, the cash flow becomes a very important thing, right? So for me, it goes down to, I don't remember is it the Hanslow pyramid? The priorities, I don't remember the name.
Yes,
I go
pyramid
back
of need.
To the very, right, the pyramid of need. And for me, at the top of the needs you have, but what I'm trying to say is the most important need for me is making sure that there's X plus 1 at the end of the month for the team. Everything else comes after that.
All
So
right.
so being able to do many things is a byproduct of the fact that your team is actually working well. Because if you're able to just fly around, to be on talk shows, to do collaboration that are not paid for, it means that you have to handle the basic layer, which is business mathematics. There's no other way to say it. At the end of the day, you need to be able to pay salaries. Fine. There are many instances where companies haven't been able to pay salaries, but they knew there would be money coming through later on. So the team have been understanding about this. Many companies are still doing it now, funded or not funded. All I'm trying to say is that a business at the end of the day needs to make sense. Okay. And this is the way I go about it. So the focus for me has been quintessentially understanding that what we needed was making sure that the money was in the bank. And anytime I would even perceive slightly that the money would not be in the bank at the end of the month, I would go into beast mode to make sure that everything would be in there, right? And this has worked. Briter has never failed a salary in 5 years. So I'm very happy about this. And then again, passion and vision are two things that go hand in hand, because passion is a function of vision, I think, because internally you know what you want. Internally you see how the market is developing based on what you're seeing, how what you're building is reacting to the market and how the market is reacting to what you're building. So inherently, vision and focus and prioritization go hand in hand for me, and needs. So once the needs are satisfied, prioritization and vision go hand in hand.
Okay. So, for everybody that I've met, even me, in your career, there might be something that, you do. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm proud of myself. This is like one of my greatest achievements in my life, right? So what do you consider to be your greatest personal achievement? I'm talking about both inside and outside of your business.
Outside of my business, I would say what has gotten me very excited recently and satisfied is the fact that I've been able to go back to my passions, which I have shaped. I don't know if you've followed me through my career, but I've never been like a suit and tie guy. I've always been someone who would like traveling, would like music, would like art, would like photography. So the fact that I've been able to go back to this, and the fact that there's a structure around what I'm doing that enables me to do that, that's a big satisfaction from a personal perspective. From a professional perspective, I'm happy that my team is getting married, is buying houses, paying mortgages, they're planning families. I think this is very important to me. And so this has been one of, I guess, professional achievement that, aside from obviously like the work that we do, and that obviously makes me very happy, I do think we are moving the needles even slightly.
I think a lot of people let go of that particular goal. They treat their employees as dispensable, right? They're not invested in their lives, and I think that is a big issue that needs to be solved. So, talking about mentorships, are you open to mentoring up and comers? Do you have any program for that or something?
I've been doing slightly mentorship. I'm someone who I'm very convinced that journeys are very different, and I find myself struggling to come up with mentorship or anything to say to someone who never interacted with, or who's building a business that is completely different from mine. Because Briter has been extremely unconventional in its design and in its growth, and because they said I do trust the process, I do trust vision, I do trust passion, I find it hard. But yes, I'm always very happy to talk to founders. I just add this caveat to any conversation, because I don't want to come across like I'm teaching a lesson, because I fundamentally don't believe in it. One of the reasons why I haven't taken up capital in our space is because there are very, very few, if any, success stories in my industry in Africa, and I am waiting and seeing before I get out there and decide to scale fast, accepting risk capital without understanding the fundamentals, without making sure that the people that help me understand the fundamentals.
All right. Hopefully that will change in future. Before we leave, what are your long-term goals for your business? So I would want to know what plans you have for Briter in the future.
I think it's growth across emerging markets. It's growth from a perspective of building a bigger portfolio. We're now growing very fast, acquiring a lot of clients and building the team. So I think from a perspective of product market fit, now we want to surf this wave. We want to surf the wave of being one of the leading organizations doing this on the continent. And there are other organizations that are trying to do similar work. They're doing great work. I think there's a lot of need for data across the world and information at large. So my plan for the immediate future are very straightforward. We're expanding vertically in terms of data, and we're expanding horizontally in terms of markets. Possibly we'll be expanding from a perspective of services and new work that we're doing. In the sense that we're not going to just do research, but we're going to do also other aspects. But I don't want to spoil anything, and also I don't want to jump the gun, because we haven't effectively rolled out all these other aspects of our business. Wait for it.
Okay, you heard it. Wait for it. Thank you very much, Dario, for joining us today on Africa Tech Radio. It's been an insightful conversation. We really wanted to know who Dario is, away from the data talk that you always do whenever you go for interviews. You're always, talking about serious stuff. I want to know who you are personally. Thank you very much for giving us that. And we hope that party that is going to happen in December, you said the end of the year, right? We are invited. Are we invited? You're nodding.
Everyone is invited.
Okay.
Everyone is invited.
Just give us the when and the where, and we'll be there. Okay.
I will.
Yes, you've listened to the conversation we had with Dario Giuliani, where he talked about his personal journey from where he started to where he is now. That is building brighter bridges. And that was a very wonderful conversation. It's been a absolutely wonderful day. You cannot imagine how I feel right now. And of course, I have to remind you that you can follow us on all our social media platforms. On Instagram, it is A Tech Radio. On Twitter, Africa Tech Radio. On Facebook, Africa Tech Radio. On LinkedIn, Africa Tech Radio. Okay? Follow us, turn on your notifications, engage our comments, subscribe on our YouTube platform, because we have amazing content for you always. My name is Lillian, and this is Back to Base in Africa. Africa Tech Radio. Thank you very much for joining us, and I'll see you when I see you.
Thanks for listening, and don't forget to catch up on all the live shows right here on africatechradio.com.